There are more than 200 references to grapes and vines in the Bible. Why so many? Well, we're going to explore that today. I'm Jonathan Watt with Atara Group International, and if you like this series we're doing on food and people from the Bible, we hope you will press the like button and subscribe to our channel. We are here right now in the Hunter Valley region of New South Wales, an area that is a massive area in which there are countless numbers of wineries and the growing of grapes, among other things, all over the region. And we're interested in what it is about the Bible that makes wine and juice so important. The fact is, wine by itself certainly does not constitute a meal. But the fact is, so many people enjoy a nice glass of wine with a meal. It seems to go very importantly together. In the Bible, wine is often associated with joy, happiness, and well-being. Furthermore, wine also becomes almost a symbol of Israel. This is right in the Old Testament itself. The two so closely identified, the one, if you will, representing the other. And if you look at various occasions in the Old Testament, you'll perhaps see why this is. In the Middle East, of course, wine is a very important production point of many parts of the Mediterranean world, and the Middle East in particular. Let's take, for example, Genesis chapter 9. After the flood, Noah actually plants a vineyard. It's important to his reestablishment of himself on earth back after this terrible catastrophe. Or let's take Numbers chapter 15, in which the spies for Israel are going into the promised land to find out if they can spy out the land and see if it's worthwhile. How do they prove that it is? Well, they come back and say they've got this pole being carried by two people with a massive cluster of grapes hanging from the pole. Evidence this is a productive land and a good place to live. It's described often then as a land flowing with milk and honey, which is probably, in part at least, an alliteration and illumination pointing to the use of wine, presence of wine and grapes in the Middle East. In Isaiah chapter 5, Israel is described as God's vineyard. And that's an interesting identification. In other words, God tends the vineyard. God takes care of the vineyard. God grows the vines, grows the grapes. And of course, there's many things you can produce from that, but ultimately, grape juice, which very naturally will eventually become at least a medium grade wine, is just sort of a natural thing to do. Therefore, perhaps it's only natural that in John chapter 15 in the New Testament, Jesus capitalizes on this imagery that is so deeply wound into the Old Testament. Jesus likens himself to the base of the vine, the part of the plant that is, coming out of the ground, but is deeply rooted downward in the ground and without which the plant could not exist. And people who belong to Jesus are like the branches of the vine that sort of spring from it, grow from it, spread out, and as long as they are connected to that basic great plant, they will stay well, they'll stay well nourished, they'll be able to grow and ultimately bear fruit. Jesus is the true vine, the stem that goes downwards. We are the branches if we're in Christ, and we're part of that experience. Interesting, by the way, the New Testament also talks about the way we experience the gifts of God's Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit. Well, there's many kinds of fruit, of course, but one important one for the Middle East absolutely was grapes, which produced juice and wine. The Lord's Supper, of course we all know this, right? The Lord's Supper is where Jesus says he is basically the drink, the vine, the fruit of the vine that is the blood poured out for us. And that is a very close identification of Jesus with, of course, something so basic to the Middle East and, of course, to the Jewish experience. And in drinking him, so to speak, we take him and make him a part of ourselves. So when you think grapes, and you think of the various juices that come from grapes and the wine that comes from the juices that comes from grapes, you could think of, well, God himself and our connection as part of that vine experience. We hope you're enjoying our series. We're looking for ideas for our next series to come in a little while, and we've had some people suggest maybe a series on mental health in the Bible. If that's something of interest to you and you want to suggest some particular ideas within that window, let us know in the comments section.